Want to understand why people cheat and how to save your relationship? You're not alone. Join our channel and discover real stories of betrayal and how people cope with it, expert advice on understanding the psychology of cheating, open discussions and support from fellow members, how to spot the signs of cheating early on. Subscribe now to get the help and support you deserve. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. I, 35M, have been married to my wife, Jenna, 33F, for 8 years. I thought we had a happy marriage, good communication, regular date nights, mutually satisfying sex life. We were even talking about starting a family soon. That picture-perfect image was shattered 3 weeks ago when I discovered Jenna has been having an affair for the past 6 months with her coworker, Jason. I found out in the most cliché way. I came home from work early one day because I was feeling ill and caught them going at it on our living room couch. I felt like I was in a bad movie. Time slowed down and sounds became muffled as my brain struggled to process the sight of my loving wife in the passionate embrace of another man. They scrambled to get dressed, Jenna spewing apologies and excuses. But I couldn't bear to look at her, much less hear her attempts to explain away her betrayal. I grabbed my keys, jumped in my car, and just started driving, with no destination in mind. I ended up at a secluded overlook off the highway, where I finally broke down, pounding the steering wheel and screaming until my throat was raw. Over the next week, I was a zombie, just going through the motions of daily life. I moved through the house silently, avoiding Jenna. She tried to talk to me a few times, but I shut her out. I couldn't sleep more than an hour or two a night. At work, my performance suffered to the point that my boss pulled me aside and gently suggested I take some time off. But by the end of that week, something in me shifted. The sadness and despair gave way to white-hot rage. How could she do this to me, to our marriage? After everything we'd been through together, all the love I'd given her, this is how she repays me. Screw her. If this is how she wanted to play it, then fine. Game on. I decided then and there that I was going to have an affair of my own. I showed Jenna exactly how it feels to be betrayed by the one you love and trust most. I started going out to bars after work, chatting up every attractive woman I met, on the prowl for a potential affair partner to enact my revenge. But I quickly realized that, having been out of the dating game for close to a decade, my flirting skills were severely out of practice and I had no clue how to navigate the modern singles scene. I fumbled my way through awkward conversations, getting rejected left and right. With each failed attempt, my frustration and anger only grew. I started drinking heavily to numb the sting. Last Friday, I decided to try a new tactic. I went to an upscale bar downtown, one I'd never been to before, aiming to find a classier caliber of woman who would be open to a no-strings-attached tryst with a married man. Scanning the dimly lit room, my gaze landed on a woman who made my heart skip a beat. She was easily the most beautiful woman in the bar, with long chestnut hair, piercing green eyes, and an alluring red dress that hugged her curves in all the right ways. I watched her surreptitiously as she sipped a martini and casually browsed her phone, seemingly unaware of the attention she was attracting from many male patrons. Summoning up my liquid courage, I approached her, prepared for yet another rejection to add to my growing list. But to my shock, she looked up at me with a dazzling smile and patted the empty bar stool next to her invitingly. I was beginning to think all the gentlemen in here were too timid to come over and talk to me, she said coyly. I am Tiffany. Josh, I replied, hoping she couldn't hear my heart hammering in my chest. Can I buy you another drink? We quickly fell into easy conversation, bonding over travel stories and our shared love of an obscure Norwegian indie band. I found myself forgetting all about Jenna and my half-baked revenge scheme as I got lost in Tiffany's enchanting eyes and musical laugh. She made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. Desired, captivated, alive. As the hours slipped by and the drinks flowed, our flirting intensified, our bodies drifting closer until her hand was resting on my thigh. When the bartender finally announced last call, Tiffany leaned in close, her lips grazing my ear as she whispered, "What do you say we get out of here and have some real fun? My place is just a few blocks away." I swallowed hard, my alcohol-addled brain struggling to consider the enormity of the choice before me. If I went home with this beautiful temptress, I'd be stooping to Jenna's level and violating our wedding vows just as she had. Could I look at myself in the mirror knowing I'd done that? But then Tiffany bit her lower lip and looked at me with smoldering, come-hither eyes, and all rational thought fled my mind. "Lead the way," I growled, downing the last of my whiskey. If only I'd known then the wild ride I was in for, and how drastically my life was about to change. But in that moment, all I could think about was losing myself in the intoxicating escape Tiffany was offering me from the pain of Jenna's betrayal. The Uber ride to Tiffany's place was a blur of roaming hands and urgent kisses. My pulse raced as her fingers trailed teasingly along my thigh. What was I doing? Some part of my brain screamed that this was a horrible idea, but it was drowned out by the overwhelming need to reclaim some scrap of my masculinity and pride after Jenna had carelessly tossed them away. Tiffany led me by the hand into her sleek high-rise apartment, not even bothering to turn on the lights before pulling me into a hungry kiss. She tasted like gin and peppermint, and I was drunk on the headiness of her desire for me. Clothes fell to the floor as we pawed at each other desperately. The sex was fast and frantic, and I took her right there on the plush living room rug, both of us crying out with abandon, uncaring of the neighbors. Afterwards, we collapsed together in a tangle of sweaty limbs, drawing ragged breaths. Tiffany propped herself up on one elbow and grinned at me devilishly. "Well, that was unexpected and amazing," she purred, tracing idle patterns on my chest with one perfectly manicured fingernail. "I knew from the moment I saw you that we have explosive chemistry." I laughed wryly. If she only knew the sordid, vindictive reason that had brought me to her door that night. I opened my mouth, on the verge of spilling the whole messy story, but something stopped me. I didn't want to shatter the illusion, to taint her image of me. So instead I just said, "I'm glad I approached you too." This was, God, incredible. We drifted off to sleep, and I woke late the next morning to the smell of coffee and sizzling bacon. I found Tiffany in the kitchen, wearing nothing but one of my shirts, looking adorably tousled. She smiled at me brightly, and I felt a strange flutter in my chest. "Hungry? I thought you might need some sustenance after last night. Just work out." Over breakfast, we talked and laughed like old friends. I was surprised at how much I was enjoying her company, even with our clothes on. I hadn't connected with someone like this since the early days with Jenna. When I finally glanced at my phone, I was shocked to see it was already past noon. I had a dozen missed calls and increasingly frantic texts from Jenna. The most recent one read, "Please just let me know we're okay. I'm worried sick. I am so sorry. Can we please talk? I love you." I stared at those 3 words and felt nothing. No surge of love, no ache of longing. Just a hollow numbness. I put the phone away without responding. Let her see how it feels to be left in the dark. Over the next week, Tiffany and I met up every chance we got. A whirlwind of secret trysts. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. Or rather, I didn't want to. Being with her was intoxicating, an addictive escape from the ruins of my marriage and shattered sense of self. She made me feel wanted, worshipped, in a way Jenna hadn't in years. The sex was mind-blowing, but it was more than that. I found myself thinking about her constantly, missing her when we were apart. Jenna grew increasingly suspicious of my frequent absences and the way I could go AWOL for hours, ignoring her calls. She accused me of hiding something, demanded to know where I was sneaking off to. The bitter irony of it made me want to laugh. I lashed out, called her a hypocrite, told her she didn't get to question my loyalty when she had utterly betrayed mine. We had screaming matches that left us both emotionally battered. And still I kept seeing Tiffany. Even as my home life crumbled, even as guilt gnawed at me, some masochistic part of myself clung to the poisonous bliss I found in her arms. I needed it, the way a junkie needs a fix. So I ignored the voice in my head telling me this could only end in tragedy. Then came the night that blew my duplicitous house of cards to the ground. Tiffany and I were tangled up naked in her bed, basking in the afterglow, when suddenly her phone on the nightstand started buzzing. She reached for it lazily, and I saw her expression change as she read the name on the screen. She rejected the call and tossed the phone down, rolling back over to nuzzle my neck. But the same number called again and again. Finally, Tiffany growled in irritation and grabbed the phone, stepping into the bathroom and closing the door before answering in a hushed, tense voice. My curiosity got the better of me. I crept to the door, straining to hear. I caught snatches of one side of a heated conversation. "I can't keep doing this. I know, but he is my husband. I never meant to. It's too complicated. You wouldn't understand." My heart stalled in my chest as the truth crashed over me in icy waves. Tiffany wasn't some innocent single girl. She was married and involved with someone else, her own sordid affair, and I was just another cog in her complicated web of lies and infidelity. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The room spun as I tried to process the bombshell I just overheard. Tiffany was married. Our whole affair had been built on a foundation of lies and betrayal, just like my marriage to Jenna. When Tiffany came out of the bathroom, she found me hastily pulling on my clothes, my hands shaking with barely suppressed emotion. "Babe, what is wrong?" "Come back to bed," she cooed. I rounded on her, my voice low and tight. "You remarried?" It wasn't a question. Her face paled and she sank slowly onto the bed. "You heard that?" "Yeah, I fucking heard." "Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I just your bit of side fun to spice up your dull domestic life?" She reached for me pleadingly. It's not like that. My marriage, it's complicated." I laughed harshly. "Complicated? Right. Well, let me uncomplicate it for you. I'm done being your dirty little secret. I've got enough of my own messes to deal with. I need to be caught up in yours too." I stormed out, ignoring her cries for me to wait. I drove around aimlessly for hours, chain-smoking cigarettes I bummed off strangers when I ran out, trying to clear my head. How had everything gotten so fucked up? A month ago, I'd been a happily married man, secure in my wife, this love. And now I was an adulterer, just like Jenna, just like Tiffany. We were all a bunch of liars and cheats, every one of us. When I finally slunk home, emotionally and physically spent, I found Jenna sitting at the kitchen table, an open bottle of wine in front of her. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Where have you been? And done to give me any more bullshit?" So I told her everything, my harebrained scheme to get back at her. Meeting Tiffany, the affair, all of it. Once I started talking, it was like a dam burst and I couldn't stop the confessions from pouring out. Jenna listened in stony silence, her face unreadable. When I finally ran out of words, she took a long swig straight from the wine bottle. "Wow, I guess we both really screwed up. Did we?" Her voice was flat, emotionless. "So what now?" I sank into the chair across from her, suddenly more exhausted than I'd ever been in my life. "I done, I answered honestly. The next morning, Jenna told me she was moving out, going to stay with her sister for a while. She needed space to think, to figure out if there was anything left of our marriage worth salvaging after all the damage we'd done. I didn't try to stop her. Hell, I wasn't even sure I wanted her to stay at this point. We both crossed lines we could never uncross. Trust had been shattered on both sides. I didn't, if we'd ever be able to look at each other the same way again. So just like that, in the span of a few short weeks, I'd gone from a loving husband to a single man living alone in a house that held nothing but ghosts and painful memories. I wish I could say that it's where the story ends, that Jenna and I patched things up, or that I learned a valuable lesson and became a better man. But life is rarely that neat and tidy. The day after Jenna left, Tiffany showed up on my doorstep, mascara streaked down her face. She told me she'd left her husband, that she'd fallen in love with me, that she wanted us to be together for real. I wish I could say I turned her away, that I was strong enough to walk away from that twisted situation. But I long since learned that I was a weak man, and I craved the way she looked at me like I was her salvation. So I let her into my home and back into my bed. We played house, trying to build some semblance of a life together out of the ashes of our old ones. But just like with Jenna, the cracks quickly started to show. We were both too broken, too bitter and cynical to trust each other fully. I was constantly paranoid that she was still seeing other men. She was always jealous and suspicious of my every move. We fought viciously, hurling accusations and cruel barbs designed to cut each other to the core. And the worst part, through all the toxic dysfunction and drama, I realized I was still hopelessly, devastatingly in love with her. Even as she tore me apart, even as loving her destroyed me piece by piece, I couldn't let her go. We were bound together by the sick, unbreakable ties of mutually assured destruction. The final nail in the coffin, pun grimly intended, came about 3 months after Tiffany moved in. She stormed out the night before after a particularly nasty argument, yelling that I'd never see her again. I'd gotten drunk and passed out. The next morning, I found her in the bathtub. She swallowed a bottle of my sleeping pills. There was no note, Maybe it was an accident. Maybe in her anguish, she just wanted to sleep and forget for a while. I'll never know for sure. What I do know is that her death shattered me in ways I didn't think were possible after everything I'd already been through. It's been a year, and I still haven't recovered. I went through the motions of the funeral in a daze. I quit my job, cut off contact with friends and family. Most days I don't even leave the house. I just sit in suffocating silence with my grief and regret, the dual nooses around my neck. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I never tried to revenge cheat on Jenna that night. If I'd been man enough to face our issues head-on instead of seeking petty retribution. Would any of this still have happened? Would Tiffany still be alive right now? I'll never know. All I know is I lost everything that ever mattered to me. And I have no one to blame but myself. The karmic scales have more than balanced for my sins. I am a ruined husk of a man, and I don't know if there is any coming back from this. So yeah, I fucked up, catastrophically. Let my tale be a grim warning to anyone considering sinking to the level of a cheater. It is never worth it. No matter how much you hurting, betraying your morals will only destroy you and everyone else around you. But hey, thanks for reading, Internet Strangers. It helps a little to spill all the ugliness anonymously like this. Signing off now to cuddle my only remaining friends, Jack Daniels and Johnny Walker. Those two bastards will never abandon me, at least. FML. The end. In the weeks following Tiffany's suicide, I spiraled into a pit of despair and self-loathing darker than I ever imagined possible. I couldn't sleep. When I did manage to pass out from sheer exhaustion and too much whiskey, my dreams were haunted by her face, sometimes flushed with passion as she moved beneath me, sometimes cold and still in death. I jolt awake, sobbing and drenched in icy sweat. I stopped leaving the house entirely. I lost track of day and night, time measured only by the level of liquid remaining in whatever bottle I was working on. Unpaid bills piled up, but I didn't care. Nothing mattered anymore. The only thing I felt was the gnawing emptiness inside, and I tried to fill it with booze and pills, anything to shut off the accusing voice in my head that screamed I killed her, that her blood was on my hands. I didn't go to the funeral, couldn't bear to face her family, to see the hatred and blame in their eyes that I knew I fully deserved. Besides, what right did I have to mourn her? I'd been her downfall, her fatal sickness. About a week after they put her in the ground, I got an unexpected visitor. I almost didn't answer the pounding on my door, figuring it was just some persistent collector I owed money to. But when I heard the slurred shout of, "Open up, you piece of shit, I know you, in there," I knew it was Jason, Tiffany's estranged husband. I swung open the door and he immediately took a swing at me, whiskey fumes wafting off him. But we were both too drunk for it to really connect. "You killed my wife, you fucking bastard," he screamed, shoving his way into my house. "She is dead because of you." I didn't even try to deny it. "You, rewrite," I said hollowly. "I destroyed her. I'm sorry." My lack of resistance seemed to take the wind out of his sails. He sort of deflated, sagging against the wall. "Why?" he asked brokenly. "Why her?" I shook my head. I don't know. At first, it was just about revenge on my own cheating wife. But Tiffany, she had a hold on me. She got under my skin. Fuck, I loved her, even though being with her was toxic for both of us. Jason let out a bitter, broken laugh. That was Tiffany all over. She could make you feel like the center of her world, like you were the only thing that mattered. Until she got bored and moved on to the next shiny new toy. We ended up getting blindingly plastered together, trading stories and memories, trying to piece together the enigma that was the woman we both loved and lost. I learned that their marriage had been on the rocks long before she met me, fractured by lies and Tiffany's insatiable hunger for excitement and validation. In a fucked up way, I think bonding over our shared pain was the closest thing to closure either of us would get. After that night, something shifted in me. I knew I couldn't keep slowly killing myself. It is not what Tiffany would have wanted, and it was a coward's way out. I had to find a way to live with the scars I carved into my own soul. I started going to therapy. It wasn't the magic cure-all, but slowly, painfully, it helped. I could breathe again without feeling like my chest was caving in. I dug myself out of the hole I burrowed into, started seeing friends and family again. I even reached out to Jenna. She filed for divorce in my absence, which I couldn't blame her for. I signed the papers without contest, knowing I had no right to fight for a marriage I'd been so willing to torch. It's been a year now since that fateful night I decided to cheat. In a lot of ways, I am still a wreck. I don't think I will ever fully forgive myself for the devastation I caused, the lives I shattered. I'll carry the weight of my mistakes, of Tiffany's death, for the rest of my days. But I am trying. I am alive, and some days that feels like a hard-won victory. So that is my story. Reddit. The whole ugly, unvarnished truth. I am not looking for sympathy. I know I don't deserve it. Just hoping that maybe, if there is some other fool out there considering the same path of vengeful infidelity that I walked, this might make them think twice. The price is too high. The scars too deep. Learn from my mistakes, even if I am still struggling to. And to Jenna, if by some twist of fate you rereading this, I'm sorry, more than you will ever know. I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me, and I hope you find someone who will love you the way you deserve, the way I failed to at the end. I'll keep picking up the pieces and trying to become something resembling a decent man again. But I'll never be that naive, trusting fool I was before all this. That man is dead and buried. I'm someone else now, carved from the rubble of my own failures. And I've got a long road ahead to make peace with him. Wish me luck, I guess. Lord knows I'll need it. Thanks for listening. Reddit. This is a throwaway, so I likely won't be responding to comments. Time to toss this account into the void like the rest of the ashes of my old life. Peace. Dear viewers, thank you for watching this video. Please share your perspectives in the comment section below. And remember to like, share, and subscribe.